Secrets of Earth kind of lacks a main character conflict. The story was meant to be a more slow-paced slice of life, exploring whoever was the main character through different settings and experiences. Tulip, being the first main character in the series, her primary conflict with a scientist from a far-removed time in history. After the story develops their relationship, she is manipulated and taken advantage of, in one final experiment that causes her a lot of suffering. This suffering created a being within Tulip's heart that would convince her to bide her time while enduring her suffering so that the entity could set them both free. This freak of the psyche is a character I refer to as Nightmare. She is the technical antagonist of SOE, at least in the first book she is, and is peak character design for what I've had in mind for her after all these years. Being a character designed to contrast Tulip, her design has barely undergone any changes over the years. Nightmare was meant to represent the concept of fear within Secrets of Earth. Being born within the heart of a once young Tulip from physical suffering and betrayal has led her to a life that she intends to exploit for her own gains. However, unlike most villain characters, she is not actively seeking any form of world domination. She's a businesswoman with a hunger for human souls. After her initial introduction in Secrets of Earth, she appears towards the end of the first story with the intent to consume souls. She would possess Tulip's body during the night and stalk random humans, usually homeless thugs, and devour them entirely. The basic rundown of her original design was a young-looking girl with shaggy black hair, a tattered black dress, and a mouth that seemed as though it was stitched shut. I shamelessly will admit that the stitched mouth idea did come from a horror movie that I had watched when I was younger. However, I have no idea which horror movie that was because it has been literal years since I've watched some B-grade horror movies. The rest of her design, though, makes a lot of sense for a character that is intended to be a dark mirror. Tulip is blonde, so the opposite would be black hair. Tulip's dress is well made, white and clean, so Nightmare's dress would have had to have been ill-fitted, torn up, and poorly made. The context of how Tulip meets Nightmare is actually a little bizarre within the story. After being hooked up to a contraption and electrocuted, she blacks out and wakes up in seemingly another place. However, this place is pitch dark. It just has a staircase that leads to a platform where Nightmare stands, just looking down at Tulip. Yet, despite the eerie energy that Nightmare gives, she never has acted in a way that would not benefit Tulip, and if anything, she has only ever actively helped Tulip through the story. Being a businesswoman, even early on in the story, Nightmare simply wants to make her own thing and keep it going. Starting out, she literally had nothing and just was hungry. Her realm was created alongside her and also needs fuel to keep going to some degree. In the story, Nightmare only becomes an active problem because, by that point in the story, Tulip needs have been met, and so that means it's Nightmare's turn to have her own needs met. However, when Tulip is faced with the reality of what Nightmare is doing, she confronts her. Despite losing so much trust in humankind, Tulip is still bothered by unnecessary death. Nightmare doesn't actually care, and is more focused on the bigger picture of her own actions and directions. As a businesswoman, she wants to expand her own realm and make her claim over her own assets, even if she doesn't have any yet. This results in an actual fight between the two, and Tulip wants to shut Nightmare down because she misunderstands a little bit of her goals. Their fight technically ends with Tulip winning, but it's a hollow victory since Nightmare isn't gone, and all that was really gained was the final form Tulip would be entering for the rest of the series. In the modern iteration of SOE, Nightmare is thriving. She has found ways to form contracts with humans to get the things she wants, even ways to possess humans in order to visit our realm, and by this point her physical form no longer even resembles the mirror image of Tulip. She's able to thicken her own features and make herself more attractive. She styles her hair in this half-slicked back, unruly style to make her silhouette more interesting to look at. And she's even replaced her old tattered dress with a dark gray gown that she's embellished with chains in order to represent the many contracts she's made with humans. In this subtle change, it's clear that Nightmare has become well fed over the course of the time between the first story and the potential end to SOE. Outside of her actual character design, Nightmare's realm, which is referred to as the Dark Zone, evolved alongside her character. From its origins as a pitch-black realm with a singular platform atop a seemingly never-ending staircase, it has become a still dark but expansive cityscape. She has completed her deals with humans and would collect their souls. She would take those souls and, rather than eat them outright, she would twist their being into the things they would fear most, and let them linger in her realm as she passively consumed their remaining energy. Over time, the amount of souls she collected amassed into a large network of connections, contracts, and materials. Even more so in that she would keep specialized people sane within her realm in order to maintain the infrastructure that she had been developing for over 1,000 years. She works effectively with people from all ages, leaving her presence just known enough to be found on the dark web or through random rabbit holes, and is able to be summoned. She acts like a cryptid, someone able to be found but not quite sure if it's believable, in order to lure people in and make contracts with them, since she cannot directly come to our realm on her own. I think the reason that Nightmare never really changed much as a character design-wise over the years is because A, she didn't really play a larger role in SOE as a villain after the first book. She was a half-baked antagonist to show contrast between Tulip. However, after the first, she would become more of a resource for main characters to seek information from, and potentially make their own deals with because of the massive amounts of information she's gathered through the souls she's collected, and the abilities her contracts have given to her over time. And B, what she was meant to be never really required her to change as a character. She was, and still is, just as content with slowly expanding her realm and making contracts. so she never really had to seek out any sort of domination. Fear will always exist, so there is no reason to try and take over. And should there be something she actually wants, she can easily set up her contracts in a way to make it happen. Or even worse, she knows that the people she wants will eventually come to her anyway. Nightmare, being a consistent entity within SOE, even more so than Tulip, also reveals some creepy parallels between the two characters. In SOE, there has become a theme of light characters not always representing goodness. Meanwhile, characters who outwardly represent evilness tend to actually be better people. Nightmare has made several deals within SOE that she barely gains anything from, but she makes them for either her own children, which are more often than not technically Tulip's children, or she makes deals with other main characters in a way that leads to them having more benefit than herself. Another contrast between Nightmare and Tulip is how they behave as parents. Tulip created her two children for herself, but with the coldness that had settled over her, it has led her to become a rather negligent mother. By contrast, while Nightmare is an insufferable mother to her older son, she dotes on her children all the same. She takes great pride in her daughter and hopes she'll eventually want to become like her and take over the family business. But she has less ambitions for her son and treats him with less regard for it. To her, he is a debt collector with nothing more to offer. However, after her son finds himself a partner in our realm, she dotes lovingly on her because of the implication of this person marrying into the family. This character is extremely powerful in the SOE hierarchy, but that's a story for another time. A final and most compelling contrast of the two women is that, unlike Nightmare, Tulip stops progressing as a character. She resigns herself to a sedentary life in the house she built, with her husband and his family. She drowns herself in the distress of the outside world and refuses to admit that she herself is causing harm to those around her for her lack of care. Nightmare, on the other hand, never stops working. She enjoys the thrill of her work, even with all the boring bookkeeping she does to keep it all in line. She likes to check in on her children, even if she won't admit to any of the wrongdoing she does to them. She makes sure that they're doing what they need to be doing, or lets them return home to take breaks from our realm. While not changing in overall personality, she is a busybody who visits her specialists and enjoys interacting with the outside world, even if briefly, and sometimes with malicious intent. Nightmare is an interesting character to reflect upon because of the subtlety of her changes since her original conception. She started out as a dark contrast to the main character, but evolved past her origins and left behind her identity as a mirror in place of her own mild ambitions. She's a strong female antagonist with moments of being a better person than her supposed good counterpart. Fear is something that is fun to explore, but when it comes to how to personify it, I think Nightmare fits the bill because of how she's used to reflect some aspects of fear, rather than just being something monstrous to be afraid of. She is easily a good representation of the fear of being left behind, or even the despair of mundane work life that many people fear getting trapped within. She's a tempting deal maker that people could look towards in order to escape what they fear most, and could gain everything from, almost forgetting that fear will eventually catch up to them should they slip up. Despite how complex her deals are, they are very fair, but very easy to breach. So, cheating your own ambitions is truly the most fear-inspiring consequence of it all. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe to stay up to date with my next character design breakdowns, and I shall see you again on the crossroads. Bye-bye.